Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Mark Peters. I'm a presenter here today with DevSecOps for the USAF Cyberweapons System, Year 1. I'm excited to be here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. This is my first year at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, and although I'd potentially rather be in Vegas, it's certainly nice to be presenting all of you regardless of the situation. With me today, or with me in the question and answer room, will be Jeff Sorrell, who works business development for Technica, as well as Brian Butler, who's our system integration lead for Technica. Both of these people will help us advance the program and help answer any particular questions you may have. Now, as I started out working with DevSecOps in Technica as their lead IA for security engineer. So I got a lot of experience in looking at some of the problems we solved and some of those unique problems we faced in trying to take an Air Force cyber weapon system and integrate it into this blend of DevSecOps. So when we're looking at that, and we're looking at what we're doing, we have to know that the mission background is the U.S. Air Force specializes in air power at the right place and at the right time. That's how we made our money. I did 22 years in the Air Force as an intelligence professional. And that's how we learned what we had to do. Now, that culture that comes with that, delivering at the right place and right time, comes with high levels of training and high levels of risk. So that culture influences even cyber tools. I used to work with a lot of fighter squadrons. I worked with both the F-16s, which were the Falcons and the Vipers, and the F-15E, the Eagle or the Strike Eagle. When they had a flying culture, they used to talk about that the rules were written in blood, that the standards they had in place to prevent things all came out of having fatal accidents. One good example is with the F-16s, which are single-engine aircraft. When they come forward to fight, they go into a one-circle fight. They each turn off like this, their cockpits face each other, and there's one circle. Well, in training, they were only allowed to do 180 degrees of the turn around that circle before they had to exit the circle and go off. That made sure that the circle stayed a constant distance. It didn't get smaller, and they didn't crash into each other and lose pilots, right? Because even though that might not happen, the chances of it happening were higher, especially if you allowed it to go more into that practice. So they test these practices, they test, and they test again to prevent any error. However, this runs contrary to when we get into the culture of DevOps, and we try to move faster, and we try to make sure that we can move faster. So what we wanted to do as we came here was try to figure out how we could accelerate that DevSecOps delivery for the weapon we were delivering while we were overcoming those cultural challenges, while we were overcoming the Waterfall mindset that said stop and check at every level, check at every facet so that we made sure we went to the right place at the right time and did what we were supposed to. Now we start off, and one of the challenges we faced, if you look at the slide over on the right of the picture, or on my right as I talk about it, this is the simplified and easy version of the DoD acquisition strategy that defines what you have to do in order to have a project delivered. Unfortunately, each of those little blocks, those little different colored blocks, probably has anywhere from 6 months to a year's worth of effort involved in the whole process if you do it right. So a government waterfall program is a 3 to 5 year cycle to get anything out, no matter how simple. Right? The simplest projects are often take longer and can be more complicated. I was once in line where they had to adapt a computer so they could focus in a pressurized environment, and that even was the 3 to 5 year cycle, even though we could buy it off the shelf. The admin and packaging of those components was more important than actually delivering a functional product at the other end. Getting all the right paperwork associated with it to make sure that something bad didn't happen was the goal and the reason we moved forward. And the reason it was that goal were those rules written in blood, right? We had to do it the right way. So we started our DevSecOps transformation. We see that the DoD, in some of the higher levels of the DoD, mandated the use of scaled Agile. They liked the scaled Agile framework. They wanted everybody to use it, and we were going to be no exception. So when we came onto the scaled Agile, when we looked at some of the integrated teams, we started off, we said, hey, we're going to have a team for development. We're going to have multiple teams for development. We're going to have kind of an operational setup, which from a program standpoint is kind of more of your program management viewpoint. We're going to have a security team, we're going to have a lab team, and we're going to have a couple other teams. And we're going to try to build those teams in together the best we can to get to the right process for us. Well, what do we see as our mission requirements? And I know I'm blocking that slide at the bottom. The part of the bottom actually says accelerated timelines. There was no standard infrastructure. We took over the contract from someone previous. The previous contract had actually not been one contract, but had been 3 contracts. They had run one for sustainment, one for maintenance, and one for development. Instead, when Technica picked up this contract, we ran one centralized contract, although we maintained subs but we did it all together so that everybody could talk together and work together. But we didn't inherit any infrastructure, so we had to build our own infrastructure. Meaning that we had no infrastructure, we had no dev environment. We had no place we could go to test things, and we stood up the infrastructure. We didn't have any physical workplaces when we started. One of the things was we'd said we'd go and have a workspace, and we had it contracted out, but then the contract ownership of the realty changed, which meant our contract changed, which meant what we expected to be there on day one didn't wind up showing until about day 180. You know, these things happen. They're part of the Agile process, right? The previous contract hadn't had integrated security built in. They had different periods of it built in. They left us with a half-built model. They hadn't finished their release when they got out. And not only that, but the releases they did have had incomplete documentation. They didn't build it all the way through in what the government expected. Now, I know Agile says that you should prefer functional software to paperwork. But at the same time, there's places where the paperwork is helpful, especially if you've got users scattered all over the world, like the Air Force. And different users have to do the same thing in a different manner. So what did that requested feature look like? What were they talking to about us when they said a weapons system? Well, the weapons system we're talking about is CVA Hunter. The CVA Hunter services is kind of a Blue Force, kind of an off-net SOC, right? That it can come in and it can take a look at your functionality, at someone else's functionality, or the functionality for that mission owner, and then provide feedback. Say, where is it good, where is it bad, outside of your normal operations set, outside of the normal process where you might see problems happen. So very good, very valuable. Cyber weapon system on the defensive side of things, right? Not an offensive, not getting out there into the enemy's network, but sneaking around our network, looking at traffic we have rights to,